Just quickly, a brief introduction about CityViz. CityViz is the data platform for economic development used by municipal and regional economic development organizations across Canada. CityViz collects data from relevant data sources from mostly publicly available major data sources, Statistics Canada, but not only, obviously. We also get data from provincial, federal, regional, CMHC, and other open data portals. It's also possible to integrate proprietary third-party data, and client organizations can also add their own data to the system and visualize everything super easy. So briefly, once data is within our central data repository, which lives on servers which are in Canada, so it never leaves Canada, and it's always kept automatically up to date. There are two components of the platform. So one is the standalone data portal, which is like a separate website, which is the central data hub, where everything is. Plus, there are the embeddable website widgets. Economic development professionals across Canada that use CityViz really love the data platform. So based on the feedback that we get from them. Why is that? First of all, because those two components that I just mentioned provide distinct advantages and make it super easy to use data to support economic development activities of those departments. And there are a number of use cases how each of these components can be used. So, for example, website widgets are typically used for investment and talent attraction, to showcase logistic and transportation options, to perform market research, get insights into business landscape, workforce as well, and much more. So those widgets are typically thematic collections of charts and interactive maps as well. And based on that, there are currently 12 widgets available, depending on the topic that they are addressing, and client organizations are able to sprinkle them across various pages on their municipal or investment attraction websites. On the other hand, Data Portal is a comprehensive central data repository and data hub, which also, apart from all the data and data visualizations and maps and everything, also includes some productivity tools. And some typical use cases include business supports, where it's super easy to provide relevant data to either new or existing businesses looking for support, to generate customizable council presentations in PowerPoint format, or, for example, investor packages in PDF format. Then it also provides data support for grant applications to make them stronger and more likely to get approved, and for possibility to add custom data as well. Just to summarize quickly, so the data platform is completely customizable, so economic development professionals are able to add their own data, create custom maps and charts, and even the content. Everything's branded according to client organizations' branding guidelines. The data collection is simplified simply because you don't have to scour, for example, Statistics Canada and go down the rabbit hole to look for a particular data set that you are looking for. Everything is always kept automatically up to date. Everything is accessible in a single hub, such as a data portal, where you can also easily create and generate custom reports in various formats. We keep adding constant improvements to the data platform, so the client organizations keep getting more value for their subscription. That was briefly about CityViz data platform. Somebody's not muted and we're hearing, yeah, if you can just check if you're muted, because it's interfering with. Thank you. All right, so that was quickly about CityViz data platform and our organization. Now on to the main topic of this webinar. So our objectives for today are to review existing sources, provide some useful links and tips and tricks, showcase the newly available monthly local workforce data, and see how it compares to economic region, how they correlate, and also see the possibility to benchmark your community with other areas across BC when it comes to those labor force indicators. Okay, so how is data for workforce development used? First of all, it's used to improve responsiveness to economic shocks. And the most drastic one was obviously the pandemic a couple of years ago. Now, with the looming tariffs, it might be hopefully not another one. So, relying on data really goes a long way in helping us understand how that affects the labor force market. The data also helps us identify skill gaps and provide training needs, also to develop the workforce, probably retraining, depending on the state of the economy, to monitor economic health and trends, also to create targeted policy and funding for those industries that require support, for example. And support business and investment decisions made by either local governments or by investors, developers, business owners, and so on. So obviously, a big number of use cases for data in the workforce development sector. So the main data sources for workforce-related data are obviously Statistics Canada Labor Force Survey and census-related workforce-related data. So those are two main ones. There are more which tie into the state of the labor force and workforce, but today we will focus on those two. So what are the strengths of these two data sources? First of all, Labor Force Survey is published monthly and annually. We are particularly interested in the data sets which are published monthly because they provide us the insight into shifts and trends on the labor force market. Labor force survey also contains detailed breakdowns by industry, so by 2, 4, and 6-digit NAICS codes, by occupation using NOC codes, by age group, gender, and so on. So on the other hand, we have census, which is really comprehensive and detailed and most often considered a golden standard when it comes to anything data about our communities. And another strength of census data is it's possible to use publicly available custom cross tabulations, which link labor force related data to other dimensions, such as, for example, income, ethnicity, indigenous origin, and yes, and other dimensions of the census data. So those custom cross tabulations are sometimes available already, ready-made on Statistics Canada website. Sometimes, if you require something which doesn't already exist, it's possible to request custom cross tabulations from Statistics Canada, and all the data that Statistics Canada produces is open by default through their Open Data License and Statistics Act. The only case where they require a particular small amount of payment for custom requests is because basically to cover the work required to produce those custom cross tabulations. And they really try hard to keep those fees reasonable. So in most cases, if it's not something completely crazy like custom geographies and so on, that would really be reasonable. Um, Okay, but apart from those strengths, when it comes to using those two data sets for workforce development, both of them have their own limitations. So first of all, with census data, it's published every 5 years. Once the census is conducted, typically labor force survey data gets released more than a year after the census was performed. Then, when it comes to labor force survey, first of all, as up until now, the data was available only at economic region and CMA levels, which typically would mask local trends. Obviously, the largest area in Canada is either unpopulated or sparsely populated. So very often those results reflect what's happening in urban centers, in population centers, and that is creating a challenge to interpret the data published by Labor Force Survey on a monthly basis for more rural or smaller communities. Another challenge is that as you start getting, for example, drilling into more details with the Labor Force Survey data, there comes a lot of suppression because of the methodology. So when the numbers are small for a particular category, Statistics Canada is obliged to suppress those numbers and show NA like there is none, simply because to prevent any potentially personally identifiable information being published. And uh, we do have experience, for example, with the suppression. Also, in the past, we ordered really highly granular labor force survey data from Statistics Canada, and the more detailed you go, into more details you go, the more suppression you encounter. So the balance needs to be struck between those two to find that level where the data is really meaningful and available at certain cross sections of industry, occupations, and so on. Okay, so a couple of examples of those challenges. Everybody remembers pandemic and the roller coaster it created on the labor force market survey. So this chart that we're seeing here comes from the economic indicators dashboard within the CityViz data platform. So where the start of the pandemic is annotated to kind of provide the context of that unemployment rate spike. So the spike, the peak happened somewhere March, April 2020, and census was conducted in May 2021, so almost 1 year later. As the time went on, census data reflected only particular snapshots of a point in time state of the labor force market. So as the recovery was improving across our communities, those numbers were really not reflecting anymore the actual numbers that were across the board. So that's one just example showcasing why labor force related data, especially unemployment and employment rates, can be really tricky for use from the census data. Another example is the not example, but the challenge is the economic region availability of data, or CMA, but there are only a handful of CMAs within the province. So if you look at the economic region level data, it's really the regions that they're covering are really vast. So BC is divided into 8 economic regions. So this map just shows how they're broken down, and you can see how large these areas are, and the numbers they publish on a monthly basis really reflect like one general number across each of these economic regions. But those numbers can really be very, very different from, for example, population centers such as, I don't know, Prince George, and I don't know, just maybe going further outside of the community as a population center. So that really poses a challenge for smaller and rural communities to take these numbers seriously, and it's totally understandable. Another example, and it's really drastic, is the example of Alberta economic regions, which are really, really super sparsely populated. So Statistics Canada, in order to come up with meaningful numbers, had to combine 2 economic regions and publish the numbers as they were one. So we will now see the map which showcases that. So this is the map of Alberta, and the area on the left side in green are the 2 economic regions combined. So together they make up for almost half of the land area of Alberta, and the rest in yellow are the remaining 6 economic regions. So publishing one single number for unemployment rate across those 2 economic regions really, I think, makes it really totally unusable for communities in these 2 economic regions. Another example, just going a slide back, so some labor force survey data points get suppressed occasionally for sparsely populated economic regions. And in BC, we see that happening in the Nechako economic region as well as in the Northeast. So for example, even the unemployment rate, like the number which would generally be available, can get being not published in particular months, and not to speak about further breakdowns into employment by industry, by occupation, and so on. So all these challenges they come from the methodology which is used to conduct labor force survey, and from that point of view, we have to have understanding for Statistics Canada. Conducting the survey on a really large sample can get very expensive. Typically, they have a pool of companies that they are polling for when conducting the labor force survey on a monthly basis. And these companies are required to fill in the necessary information about their employment by broken down by all these dimensions that I mentioned previously. So industry, occupation, gender, age group, and so on. And they are suffering now from even dropping response rates. So even those the companies that they are polling are required to submit those surveys, the response rates are dropping, creating even more obstacles for producing the meaningful numbers. Yeah, conducting the survey on a larger sample would require more resources within Statistics Canada itself, and then that produces another challenge internally. So that's how things go. It's really, I think this picture really reflects this. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what we wanted to highlight really today, and that's the availability of small area estimates of labor force characteristics. So that's published monthly as well. Here in the slide, there is the link where you can access the data table on Statistics Canada website, and it will be shared in the presentation. So Ashley will send the link, and Isabella will paste also the link to the presentation in the chat. Here within this Statistics Canada table, you can play around. So look for your community, select the labor force characteristics that you're interested in, and also choose the reference period. There is one difference compared to regular labor force survey results published at economic region CMA levels monthly, and that is that there is a lag of 2 months between those two data. And that comes from the methodology that Statistics Canada is using to produce these estimates. It's first of all, it uses some additional data sources like employment insurance beneficiaries, for example. So because the publishing of employment insurance beneficiaries gets published 2 months later compared to labor force survey, that's why those small estimates are also produced with a 2 months lag. So currently, the most recent available data at economic region and CMA level is January 2025. The most recent available data for at the local level is November 2024, so there is 2 months lag. In this slide, there is also the link to the methodology on Statistics Canada website, which produced the explanation of methodology behind conducting the labor force survey and how did they come up with those small areas, what they are, and so on. So in essence, Statistics Canada is using the commuting patterns between the communities across Canada to come up with those what they call small areas or local areas based on these commuting patterns. This particular data set is less significant for CMAs, and the reason for that is that in the CMA, in the metropolitan areas, such as for example, Vancouver metro area or Victoria or Kelowna, communities which comprise those CMAs are typically so interleaved that it becomes practically impossible to distinguish between smaller communities within the CMAs, because in general case, the large majority of the population from neighboring communities would commute to work to the largest population center. Okay, so there's the link for methodology as well, if anybody wants to read that into more details. Now, one interesting tool on Statistics Canada website is the Rural Data Viewer. There is the link for that as well. And I will show you as well in the browser what it looks like and what you can do with it for those who are not familiar already. So this is another screenshot what it looks like. So there are multiple layers that you can select when playing with the rural data viewer. Currently, this view shows the unemployment rate percentage across Canada, broken down into those small area levels. So there is the link for that as well. Just let me see, next slide. Okay, I will just switch quickly to the browser. Okay, so this is the table that I mentioned previously. Table number is 14100457. And I mentioned that you can, by going to add remove data, you're able to play around with the layout as well as what you want to select. So here you can first select geography. You can search for your particular community. So I will show more about Portal Bernie later on. So I will just search that one as an example so you can filter so it narrows down the selection directly to that particular community that I selected right now. Labor force characteristics, so we can select, yeah, so I didn't mention that there are unfortunately only 3 indicators available, but compared to really what was available up till now, this really goes a long, long way in understanding the fluctuations and the trends on the labor force market at this local level. So those indicators that are available are total employment, unemployment rate, and overall employment rate. So it's limited to those 3 indicators. There is no breakdown by industry or by occupation. So it's limited to only those 3. But as I say, it really, really goes a long way in understanding the bigger picture at the lower level. Statistics. So here we can select, typically you would only look for estimate. Other available statistics are the standard error and lower and upper bound of the confidence interval. So statistically relevant information, but generally you would look for estimate only. Reference period, so you can select the reference period that you're looking at. So it goes back 3 years, and once you select that, you just click apply, and it provides the data for the selected options. So that's how you can use this particular Statistics Canada table. There is also the button which provides the download options. I'm not sure it applied. Okay, so the download options, there are a number of options. You can provide the data table as per your current selection, or you can download the entire table and so on. So you can look into them later on. So that was the data table. This is the methodology. So it's not a really long document, but there are a lot of mathematical formulas. So if anyone is interested, you don't have to dig into mathematics, but just kind of read the introduction section and understand more of a background behind their motivation and the methodology that they used to come up with these numbers. And finally, the rural data viewer. So your rural data viewer is a map of Canada by default when you load the page. Let me just refresh this quickly. So when you load the page, it shows, I think, yeah, okay, in this case, it shows the employment rate. So as you zoom in, you get a little bit more info. So those brown areas are urban, and so CMA and census agglomerations, so we can turn them off and get also a sense of currently selected indicator for those areas as well. We can zoom in further. So I mentioned previously Portal Bernie. It should be here. Yeah. So right now we can see what was the unemployment rate in Portal Bernie. The disclaimer about Rural Data Viewer is that currently it's at June 2024, so they didn't update it for several months. But you can use this as a reference what it will look like at a particular point in time, and hopefully they will update the tool with the latest numbers. There are some other layers that you can select. So by default, it shows the employment rate. We can also look at the unemployment rate. Again, turn off the urban areas as from being highlighted to be able to see their numbers as well. The map is highly interactive, so you can zoom in in, zoom out, move. On click, as I said, we get more information. There are some other additional interesting layers here. So CWS, that's the employment, so the wage subsidy which government was giving out during the COVID. So I don't think it's relevant anymore. But there's one interesting, for example, proximity to amenities and services. So if you select that, then again, it shows how amenities and services are accessible throughout our communities and some other layers. So anyway, you can, there is the link in the presentation, so you can look at the tool and play around with it and get some really interesting insights. So that was a quick look into those Statistics Canada tools. Now going back to the presentation, that was the introduction of the data viewer. So some of you may be familiar with the economic dependencies dashboards that CityViz released in partnership with 3 economic trusts in BC, so effectively covering almost the entire area of the province. So economic dependencies dashboard is also based on what so-called local areas. So somebody may ask, are they the same thing? And the answer is they're not the same. So simply because the methodologies behind coming up with those small areas is not the same. So economic dependencies dashboard is developed based on data published by BC Stats, and BC Stats came up with those local areas. So the model they use behind, unlike from Statistics Canada, is proprietary, so they did not publish the methodology. But according to their statement, which is associated with the data set, those areas were created by economists and statisticians in BC Stats who are pretty well, who are familiar very well with state of the economy across BC. And I think they possibly used commuting patterns, but not only. I think they also used some other indicators such as employment and income and so on. So indicators which are relevant for the labor force, and basically coming up with those local areas to identify regions which more or less share similar patterns in the economy. So there is that disclaimer that if you are using the labor force survey results at the local level from Statistics Canada, and if you are also using the economic dependencies dashboard for various purposes such as grants or anything else, or driving the internal economic development strategy, for example, it's important to understand that those local areas are not the same thing. So they may be very similar, but in some cases they may differ greatly. So just to keep that in mind. So the 3 trusts that I mentioned, if you're not familiar with them, so the first one is ETSI-BC, covering the southern interior, comprising of Thompson, Okanagan, and Kootenays economic region. Northern Trust, covering the almost 2/3 of the province, or the northern part of the province, and finally Vancouver Island and Coast. So we worked together with those 3 trusts to develop the visualizations and all the logic behind these economic dependencies dashboards, and they are deployed. And we got really great feedback from not only from the trusts themselves, but also from the communities that these tools have been used really greatly for various purposes that I mentioned. Another thing is also it's possible to deploy these tools at the municipal level, and we have several examples where we have isolated the data at the local level for these communities, and they have been used successfully so far too. So that was about the monthly available local labor force survey results, the hard way, so to speak, because you need to go to Statistics Canada website, look for data, make sure that you always fetch the most recent one, and so on. But there is also the CityViz way, and the CityViz way is always keeping it updated automatically, available at your fingertips, visualized using charts and maps. downloadable in PDF or PowerPoint format. And also there is the possibility to compare these trends between the local and economic region level. And we look also into the correlation between those trends so that we can understand how trends which are happening on a larger scale may affect trends which are happening locally. And especially because there is that 2 months lag between economic region available data and local area data, it can help, the correlation can help us understand what is potentially coming up for local areas. So with that said, I will just briefly switch to CityViz so that we can see what's available there with regards to the labor force survey. Yeah, after that we can have a Q&A, so feel free to ask any questions you may have. So here we're looking at the instance of Portal Bernie. First, the regional trends. So this is the data which was available previously, so economic region level data. This particular page is developed as a kind of storytelling, journalistic style narrative. So there are some key insights on top, and then particular topic at one at a time. So, for example, first we focus on composition of the workforce by status. So overall workforce is broken down into full-time employed, part-time employed, and unemployed. And we look back 13 months from the most recent data so that you can compare the numbers to the previous month as well as the same month of the year before. So all these insights, the narrative which interprets the data shown in the chart is AI powered. So it's also automatically regenerated as part of the update procedure in CityViz data platform. So whenever the new data comes in, the visualizations pick that up automatically. But as part of that data update procedure, the insights, so key insights, and all this narrative is automatically regenerated as well. So the next topic, the rates, so employment, unemployment, and participation rate. Again, all the charts are interactive, so on hover, we get a little bit more information. We can zoom in into particular period in time, for example. So double clicking brings us back. We can turn off any particular series. So for example, if I click the unemployment rate, it leaves that series out so that we focus only on, in this case, participation employment rates. Number of jobs added or lost by month. So this is overall number of jobs across all industries. The bar going up means new jobs added within that particular month. The bars going down in a secondary color typically mean lost jobs within that particular month. Then overall employment by industry broken down first into services and goods sectors, and then each of them breaks down further into individual industries. So by hovering, we get more info about any of these industries. Top three industries in both goods and services sectors are highlighted. So top three by overall employment. Top five industries by change from previous month. So those industries which recorded the largest change, whether positive or negative. So with number of and percentage of overall increase or decline within those industries. So that's comparison to the month before, and then there is the comparison to the same month of the year before. So here the primary color, the dark color, represents most recent data, and the secondary color is the data from the same month of the year before. And again, those industries are described, the changes are described here. And then finally, the conclusion. So overall employment by industry for the last 13 months, the darker the color, the higher the number of employees. So we can see, for example, here in accommodation, how, okay, this is the effect of seasonality. But if we look at that industry, we can see that it got darker over the high season months simply because it was tourist season. But at the same time, we can, for example, transportation and warehousing slightly increasing here in the summer months as well. So this is the regional interpretation, and as I mentioned, we keep adding more insights and keep improving the data platform for the same subscription, so you keep getting more value. So we will be adding more breakdowns that I mentioned previously. So employment by occupation, as well as those breakdowns by age groups and gender. Now focus on the local trends. So similar thing to the regional ones. and similar style of the data visualizations. Again, that journalistic kind of narrative with key insights provided on top. Overall employment and how it was changing over the last 13 months of the available data. So we mentioned 2 months lag. So regional data currently January 2025, local data November 2024, and here it goes back to November 2023, so that we can compare where we are compared to the same month year before and where we are compared to the month before. So overall employment increased, but it's lower than what it was the year before. And here in the interpretation, it tells us what's the number of jobs which were added or lost. Similarly, the employment and unemployment rate trends. So the top chart is the employment rate. The top series, the line is the employment rate, and the bottom one is the unemployment rate. And again, the interpretation and comparison to the month before, as well as same month the year before. Now, this is the interesting one. So comparing regional and local patterns. So here, this is the comparison of the total employment. Obviously here, because the regional level where there is almost 400, almost 500 people employed on the Vancouver Island coast economic region compared to here, for example, in Port Alberni local area, roughly around 15,000. So that's why the big difference. So the trend here in the local one is kind of masked. But if we turn off the regional series, then we kind of zoom in into the changes at the local level. Then comparison of employment rate. So here we can see how they are pretty similar, but still they different. There are months when one goes up, the other goes down, and so on. So here, for example, so it says moderate correlation 0.35. So the higher the number, the better. Yeah, so here we see last year, beginning of the year, the employment rate was significantly higher at the local level compared to economic region level. Then in the fall last year, the local one dropped a little bit compared to the regional one, although they were both going down a little bit. But then we see the recovery at the regional level, and that correlation kind of gives us the sign what we can expect, hopefully, to happen at the local level as well. Similarly, we have the comparison of the unemployment rates, comparison regional versus local patterns. And again, we can see that those fluctuations can sometimes be really significant. And finally, there is a description of what that so-called local area defined by Statistics Canada is comprised of. So what are the municipalities that create this local area? So in this particular case, it's the city of Port Alberni plus several electoral areas around it, and some indigenous communities as well. So that's the visualization and also correlation and comparison of local trends to the regional ones. And then we have also assembled the map view, which kind of puts that story into one single place. So we have everything and even more. So the map is again full interactive. So here on the map, first we see the community we're talking about, Port Alberni in this case, local area, and there is a list of municipalities which are comprising this local area. And as we scroll down, we get those charts again in a similar manner as in the previous screens. So employment trend at the local level, employment and non-employment rate trends. The first one was total employment. So this was total employment, and these are the employment and unemployment rates. Then how they compare, so comparison regional versus local area. And again, that one as well. So now we look at the regional data, and the map shows how that local area compares to the region. So you can see, so just zoom in a little bit again on however we get more info. So the light red color is the economic region, and the purplish here is the Port Alberni local area. So obviously the difference in the communities that they include is really significant, and that just gives the I think kind of explains the importance and the weight of having these numbers available at the local level. So here, as we scroll down the page further, we get all these charts that we've seen in the original view as well. Also employment by industry, changes from the previous month, from the same month the year before, then overall employment by industry. And now, interesting one, benchmarking your community to other local areas across Canada, across BC. We can do it even across Canada, but we are limited to BC only. So here is the Port Alberni. Here there is a description. So among 94 small areas in British Columbia, Port Alberni ranks 23rd with an employment rate of 57.1. And then it also says what is the range within the province. So from 23.4, and that would be the Caribou J here, standing out in a negative way, unfortunately, up to 67.4, and median is 51.5. So in the case of Port Alberni, we see that it's 6 percentage points, almost 6 percentage points above the median. So pretty good for employment rate. And similar thing for unemployment rate. So for unemployment rate, Port Alberni ranks even better. So it's top 5. Obviously, for unemployment, when we talk about unemployment rate, top 5 means 5 communities with the lowest unemployment rate, because lower is better. So the unemployment rate in Port Alberni 3.2. Sorry, 5.2, and provincial rate 3.7. So 3.7 is Victoria here. Again, we can zoom in into the map, get more details. So Victoria metro area unemployment rate of 3.7. So on a map like this, you can look up your community and see how it compares to other communities across the province. So that was it about how we present this labor force information within CityViz data platform. Obviously, there is also the census-related information. It's part of community profile module here in the data portal. So the entire workforce-related information is grouped into several subtopics. So workforce by status, comparison to higher administrative levels such as regional districts, province, and Canada, overall employment and workforce by work activity, class of worker, place of work, and so on, commuting patterns. So this is an interesting chart which shows how many people are commuting between the communities in both directions, and so on. But that's all based on census, while the monthly updated data is under economic indicators workforce. And I also mentioned previously the economic dependencies dashboard, and the example of it being deployed at the municipal level as well. So Port Alberni is one really great example for that. So there are other communities using it, but just to mention Port Alberni since we're focused on that. So really some basic indicators such as number of jobs by industry, but also some advanced ones like advanced indicators like location quotient, income dependencies, employment impact, local supply shares, and so on. Plus the recently developed analysis module where you can focus on economic strategy or even calculate how adding jobs impacts particular industries. So for example, creating 10 jobs in forestry would create 3 indirect jobs in supporting industries such as for example, transportation, and 8 induced jobs. So in industries, so that's more long-term effect. And it also shows what is the economic impact of basic income gained or lost based on the number of jobs added or lost. So that was briefly or not so briefly about the labor force and how we visualize all that in CityViz. We provided several links to Statistics Canada resources that you can use for that. If you have any questions about how to use resources on Statistics Canada, not necessarily related to what I've shown today, also about anything else, feel free to reach out. We have a pretty deep knowledge of the data on Statistics Canada website and are able to help you with that. If you are interested in going more advanced and deploying installing the visualizations tools such as CityViz data platform, feel free to reach out. As Ashley mentioned at the beginning of the session, there is the BCEDA membership discount for BCEDA members. And those discounts vary from 10 to 20% depending on the length of the subscription, on the subscription term. So you can explore that. If you would like to book a demo, we have a shared calendar on our website that you can use to book a demo. So feel free to reach out either through booking a demo on the website or via email or by phone. We're here for you. We work with really big number of communities across BC. So yeah, I think that's all I had to share for this session. If you have any additional questions about this particular topic, again, feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to help you. So now I would like to open for Q&A.